All right, hello everyone. My name is Disk, and in this video we have a 19 Azure Vault. For the week, we are still Tyrannical, Sanguine, and Explosive. I don't want to talk about too much for this video, but let's take a look at my talents first real quick. So nothing has changed, just if you want to see it. I'm playing Long Rapture. And I'm keeping Mass Dispel in my book these days. I think that's just the play. And I really like shield build. It's preferential. I think that's going to change going into 10.0.5. I think a Shadow Covenant build favoring Shadow, obviously, will probably be a little bit better. So I imagine I'm going to drop Long Schism. And I'm thinking I'm going to drop Wheel and Woe because mainly we're going to have half as few procs. And I still probably won't go Twilight Equilibrium, but I will go Expiation. And I think that's where the real sport of Discipline is going to come in, is your Expiation. So I'm excited to get back to that. I actually really like that talent point, and I have experimented with it when I was Twilight Equilibrium. But it's been a while. I think it's really strong. So that's probably my plan. And I'm not sure about the paints up yet. Honestly, I don't know. I'll have to see. And then the only reason, if you're wondering, I don't do Shadow Covenant now is because Dark Reprimand, the first time I tried this, I realized, oh snap, you can't use Dark Reprimand as a defensive heal. And that is just not a handicap I ever want to put myself in. I don't think defensive Penai are the best use of them, but sometimes it's absolutely the right call to save a play, and I don't ever want to be in a case where I can't do that. So yeah, for sure, I would call that maybe an oversight of the developers. I don't know. I feel like there's been a couple of oversights with the spec, mainly also Harsh Discipline. Only interacting with Smite, I just don't think that's the right thing. So I'm glad someone has clued into this and they're updating the spec. I'm not sure if I would call it stronger or weaker. I think it's just going to change, and it's going to change for me. But I do look at these as like corrections. I don't think the spec was built out fully. Okay, but anyway, that's enough of talents. The main little subject I wanted to talk about as an intro here, someone made a comment on my last video and said, I really like your Grid 2 setup. I imported it, but I'm noticing it does not show an indicator for whom I'm targeting. Do you know how to fix that? And it dawned on me that the biggest philosophy of my playstyle is something that I happened to skim over and never even mentioned for the last 40 videos. But it's something I've been doing for so long, I think I just started assuming that's how everyone did it, and I forgot that it might be an actual key strategy in my gameplay here. But without beating around the bush any longer, what I'm getting at is you never want to have an ally targeted as Discipline. 100% of the time you want to keep an enemy targeted, and that's because you always want your atonement spells to be at the ready. In my last videos, we've talked about click casting, and mainly I talked about how we're going to use it to divide our penance cast, but the main reason we want to use click casting is so that we can always keep an enemy, oh, I'm about to get hit, always keep an enemy targeted so that our atonement spells will do what we need them to do when we press them. Also, one way to look at that is at the end of a dungeon, if you are swapping your targets to friendly to heal and then swapping back to your enemies and back and forth, not only are you going to be like having to work to find your schism, your atonement spells aren't going to be at the ready. And a big subject, maybe it's more of a subject of minutia, but a lot of gamers talk about taking clicks out of their gameplay. It's a real powerful strategy when you're trying to lessen the work your physical hands have to do. So we don't want to be swapping targets all the time. We want to keep an enemy targeted 100% of the time, ideally your schism. And that's so that our atonement spells will always be there when we call on them. And that's just the main strategy of Discipline. I think for any other healer spec, if you're swapping to a friendly target to heal them, that's probably fine. I definitely think if you have a method that works, there's no need to break a system if it ain't broke, or whatever I'm saying. But with Discipline specifically, a click casting system is just the way to do it. You want to be able to heal your allies with mouse over macros through click so that you can keep an enemy targeted. And I think I said that pretty clearly. I hope everyone's following along. I think the strategy of my YouTube channel is it will kind of be a cumulative type channel. So I might reference something, from last week, and I guess you either are going to know what I'm talking about or not. So I am going to try and make these videos kind of face value for anyone, but there probably will be some subjects that I build upon from my previous videos. But I think that's everything I want to say. I've been playing with Yasmin, which is really cool. I feel like we partner well together, and we've been bringing in one of his friends too. But this key is all about tank slams. I feel like there's just a ton of tank slams. And with our book as a Discipline Priest and having these really nice shields, to maximize our play, you just really have to be able to see those tank slam casts. You kind of have to just be ready and expecting them. And the best way to get ahead of it is honestly with a 7 stack of Wheel and Woe. Just a small caveat for like rotation that I've been noticing. I'm not really casting shield unless it's a 7 stack Wheel and Woe. And I'm not really casting penance unless it's a harsh discipline proc. So I'm not just dropping spells willy-nilly. I'm really banking them for the opportune moments. And these fights are so fast-paced, you're only going to be holding a spell for maybe 2 globals at a time before there is an optimal moment. So you don't really want to just be throwing shields out because it's available. You want to empower it with harsh discipline and hold it for the right moment, and that will really get value. I definitely don't think shields without a 7 stack proc are worth the time, and that's just kind of where I stand right now. But I think that's everything I want to say. There's a lot we can talk about during the key. This was a really good run, so I think we can just get through it. So let me go ahead and clip over. All right, here we go. We have the 19 Azure Vault. We have a Paladin as our tank, Monk, Hunter, Evoker. And off the top, the first thing I always do is try and pre-plan and pre-select who I'm going to PI. And I was giving it to our Monk because he's our friend in Discord with us. And I don't think he would take any offense to this either. Once the key got going, we saw that the Hunter was just doing outstandingly well. So I did switch my PIs over to him. And I think it's totally at your discretion as the priest where your PIs go. Sometimes if someone's dead, you have to give your PI somewhere else. So being able to see these offensive spells for your whole party is just the right thing to do. A lot of people use OmniCD and track like 100 different spells per spec. I just don't think that really serves any purpose. But I do look at OmniCD as potentially acting as my system to maximize PI. And that's what I use it for. Okay, here we go. So between now and boss, the way I look at it is we have enough time for one of every major spell. And this first pull is the hardest. It's a cooldown dump. PI on the Evoker. So I try and roll my Divine Star because it's my best AoE spell. But after that, I'm like kind of spent, I try and keep my dots active, but switch to orbs as priority. So looking at the meters real quick, Evoker had PI in its bottom of the list. Hunter did 227,000 damage per second. So I think that was when I noticed I'm going to switch to Hunter. We played a couple keys with him. He did his job really well. So I don't need a barrier, but again, we have enough time to drop it. Oh my god, that orb. So also with KUI, you might notice I changed my schism target to turn purple. I tried that before and I switched away from it. But I think, especially with explosive week, when I am having to swap targets a lot, seeing a purple nameplate helps me get back to my schism. Levitate, cancel R, levitate. I think levitating people in is funny. I know I'm a troll, so it's like fine. And then a really nice keybind and macro that I've come up with. There's nothing to talk about here, so I'm just going to talk about macros for a second. I try and keybind spells in a way that it flows naturally and easily. And for me, if I'm trying to think, how do I want to cast my levitate, and how do I want to cancel aura my levitate? And I think the best way to do that is by putting it on the same keybind. That is Shift Spacebar. God, that was hard for me to get out. So usually going into a levitate, you'll like jump first. So I will hit spacebar to jump, and then shift spacebar is cast levitate, and then shift spacebar again is cancel aura levitate. And that macro, there's nothing to it. Top line is cancel aura levitate / cancel aura levitate, and second line is cast at player levitate. It's honestly not a 100% sound macro, but you definitely can learn how to use it, and it is helpful. Okay, we have this boss. Discipline is built for this. The damage profile here matches perfectly with what we got. You just have to play it right. So with bigwigs, I'm tracking just these two attacks. Consuming Stomp is the big one, but our first round of spells is Rapture, and we want it to cover the brand and the stomp. So I wait for the brand to go out, straight into Rapture. I want to get one shield on every person in my party, fade as soon as ads come out, and then I have enough time to refresh shields on everyone. And my last cast there before the stomp was a flash heal, and that was to engage my 10% reduction. And yeah, that was not a problem for anyone. And I mentioned as we started this video, this is a key all about tank slams. The tank has a red dotted line now, but that's just for the bleed. But you'll see a white dotted line, and that is coming from the targeted spells weak aura, and that is the cast for the tank slam. So engage my 10% reduction. I put a single shield on myself. Fade. This is our barrier round. Single shield on myself. And yeah, so the best way to lay a barrier there, we're only trying to cover the upfront damage of that attack. So if you lose some barrier value on the front end, it doesn't matter. So what I'm getting at is you need to lay it down early, and that's just to give your teammates a moment to get in it. And right there we had a really nice defensive penance into the tank. He just needed it. I have been getting ahead of all of the tank slams with a shield, but that one I was not able to get ahead of. So my next defensive play was a defensive penance. And we're back to a Rapture. So it's really nice. Rapture's a 1.5 minute cooldown. We get a Rapture the first and third. And I think I was talking over it, but I really did want to highlight how I was shielding the tank slams. There was one. So you want to watch for that white dotted line. You know it's coming, you know it's going to happen. So I try and get a penance proc. I try and get a nice wheel and woe proc, and I try and hold that proc for a moment so I can give the tank a nice shield. And what I've been doing to hold my harsh discipline is I just start hitting any other spell. So Mind Blast, Soulless, Death, Schism, Flash Heal, Renew. I like that move too. If you give yourself a speed boost and a penance, you get 25% extra speed, and you can jump and levitate and hold that speed all the way down the steps. But the main reason I think they need to adjust harsh discipline to interact with more spells, I guess it's just unfortunate that I'm not going to go wheel and woe anymore. But banking a wheel and woe for a couple globals I think is really pro, and you don't want to just sit there and not press anything. So I think defaulting to your other spells is the learning curve there, and the way the spec is built, it penalizes you actually for wanting to use that proc optimally, and I would say that's where the oversight of the spec comes in. If anyone at Blizzard wants some consulting help, hire me. So there is our PI on our hunter. And these guys don't really do much. That white dotted line going out in party is the cast for the sleep. Walking Bane, Waking Bane. That white dotted line is different though, that's a tank slam. So I don't think any of the Waking Banes got off because we're coordinating. But being able to see where they're going can give you an advantage to be a little bit less reactionary with your playstyle. And also in these pulls, you'll notice I bring in that red cast bar above my action bars. And that is for the Icy Binds cast. It's the AoE freeze spell. It can really mess up a group. So in those type pulls, if you were going to optimally use Fear Bomb, it would be on the Icy Traps. What are they called? Icy Bindings? One of those. But that's definitely a great place to play your fear. It can save a group. And I used to have a really big problem with explosives. I felt like they were besting me, and I'm talking like 6 or 7 months ago. I just couldn't figure out how to do them best. And I thought there was like a secret that I wasn't in on, or like how were other people doing this, because I really struggled. And that kind of just inspired me to figure out my own method. And I don't think it's a new method. I think I was just a little bit behind the times. But I think color coding your battlefield is just the way to do it. So, yep, we see a purple here, color coding for Schism. We have dark red for focus targets, solid red for focus targets. We have half opacity for non-focus targets. And in this poll, the Crystal Furies aren't necessarily the healthiest mobs here, but I have them marked a different color, reminding me to not be in front of them. So just like in Halls of Valor, I had the Shield Maidens stand out, and I guess I can make these guys a gray color too, but I have these guys stand out because they have frontals, and I just gotta really be aware of my positioning as it relates to theirs. And I think that glow for the explosive nameplate really does help. There was a point in time in my career where I knew I liked the glow but didn't know how to use it, and at any given moment there would be 100 things glowing on my screen, And it took me a while to realize that's not the best way to use the glow feature. I think it needs to be highly selective, and at most maybe one item on your screen at a time normally. But for the explosives, I just think it's nice to give them a little bit of definition. Also, that audible sounds like a sonar. I think that's appropriate. Also, a strategy that I don't think I ever struggled with until this week. I don't know how I never figured this out. But I think I have my, oh, the IC binding's cut off. My spacing for my nameplates is very standard. I think a lot of people play with this type spacing. But in keys, I find the most common camera angle is somewhat downward. And when you do that, it forces all of your nameplates to bunch up, and it's really hard to select the orbs. So again, what I'm getting at, I have these long-winded explanations. I pan my camera much more parallel to the floor, and it will spread the nameplates, and it really helps you pick out the explosives. And I think you've probably seen that every big pull so far. I just haven't mentioned it, but you'll see it in the future. I'll pan my camera angle like parallel to the horizon or whatever, and it really helps you for targeting. So using mouse over macros for maybe like death, shadow word death, or dot, really helpful because you can get your orbs without switching your target. And again, that's because we always want to keep an enemy targeted. We want to keep our schism targeted. So we just lost a guy. That's really sad. We have a hunter, though. I kept saying this in Discord. I'm confused. Like, don't they get misdirect every pull? Like, there's not a long cooldown on that. They can do it every pull. So I don't know why we had an aggro rip like that.
5, 4.
So anyway, we're debating in chat, like, what do we do? Because we were going to pull bigger, but now that this guy's dead, we kind of needed to sink the time into this 2-pull just to get the res. But that's what we got to do. Ring a piece for the win. I really miss punt. I really just love bringing utility spells to a group, and punt was so nice. So with res, a nice little sequence is always shield, then res. And that's because we get that, it's like 8% haste from casting shield. Makes res a lot quicker. So we have time for one more round of spells, I believe, before boss. At least the 2-minute spells. Okay, and this guy has a tank slam that's like a channeled spell. And I have it marked through the targeted spell's weak are. You saw it right there on the tank. And I really like giving him pain sup through it. It's just, it feels nice.
4.
But it looks like for that first one I opted to barrier him. For that one I just flooded a defensive penance. And most of the time that's not the right play, and it probably wasn't the right play there either, because so much of it will go straight to overheal, when it'd be better just to give it offensively. Usually the atonement healing from a penance, a 7-proc penance, is enough anyway. But I should have dropped pain sup on one of those. I should have done that instead of the defensive penance, especially that proc. But when a pull needs a defensive penance and none of it goes to overheal, it's just the best feeling. Oh my god, talking about wasting penance. I remember doing that now too. I used a big penance proc accidentally on an explosive. Rip. It looks like I dropped PI back there, but I do think my PI game's been a lot better, even though I might not be calling it in here. The best thing to do in a key, regardless if you're disc or another healer, DPS or anything. Ouch, that hurt. the main thing you want to do is get as many key presses in a dungeon as possible. So, and I know there's going to be an Icy Bindings. There was my Fear Bomb. Most likely our Paladin had it, but I wanted to throw in some utility. And you'll notice I dropped PI only in like the start of this room, and it has come back available. So there's no reason to hold it just because boss is in front of you. Okay, so one of those things that I've learned from watching myself back, I always recommend that, and here's an example. So the Arcane Cleave that the boss casts on the tank absolutely should be shown through the targeted spells weak aura, and I did not have it loaded in there. So just like on the first boss where there's a tank slam, we got a tank slam here. So as an opener in this phase, man, I really almost threw. So as an opener in this phase, the first round is Rapture, but I want to open with 4 dots, then my Rapture. And it's really not a problem. I think I had Atonement out already, but a strong play is always to Radiance, then Rapture. It kind of buffs your Rapture by whatever your mastery is. And you'll see there, the Cleave hit the tank, and I didn't shield him. So I think it was halfway through this boss that I was like, oh my gosh, why am I not shielding here? There was one. So that attack can really sting. I think the best play is to position yourself so that every cleave you have a 7 proc shield to give the tank. And that one I missed. Yeah, it puts him in the red. So a targeted spell trigger like that, in a case like this, I think shielding ahead of the cleave is the best play if you have a proc. And if you don't have a proc, you still need to precast something like a flash shield. So you can use it 2 different ways. You can look at it as a shield opportunity, or at least a flash shield opportunity. And for this phase is our Shadow Fiend. I'm trying to flash heal others as quickly as I can, because people will get out of range of you like without fail. So if they're in range of you, really do your best to give them a flash heal, which is a long atonement, and it's a binding heal. Okay, so here's our second round of PI going on our hunter, who is killing it. And I think I shielded that cleave too. Yep, 7 proc shield. Shielded that cleave, nothing even happened. And I think I'm going to turn it off, but the illusionary bolt from the ad, I'm seeing the targeted weak aura in party. Well, maybe I'll leave it on. I guess I don't think it's totally necessary. It might be better just to highlight the cleave and not have like competing things going off in party. Salzet, I don't think the boss is too hard. I think the biggest obstacle is being on top of your movement. I mentioned it in my last video, but with my keyboard hand, my left hand, I'm pretty much only WASD. I'm not casting any spells over here because movement in a key is paramount if you want to succeed. Dodging your avoidables, being able to position yourself properly and avoid things, super duper important. So I'm not giving my left hand any responsibilities other than movement. Click casting, keeping an enemy targeted. Yep. Okay, so this big trash pull, the biggest threat really is the orbs. Also, one of your best defensive here is to have everyone dotted. So I'm trying to farm my dots, picking out people with low dots or no dots. And I'm also making sure I'm running penance, because that's a very reliable way to spread a dot. Also, I didn't mention this sooner, that's another break in the build right now, so developers, if you're listening, please, please, please fix our Revel Impurity. It's supposed to spread 2 dots and less than half the time it works. I would say 20% of the time it works. That is not good enough. Sorry, it's not good enough. We need that talent to work fully. People already don't like us. We don't need any weaknesses like that. Okay, so moving forward, that's my rant. We have PI, we have Barrier, we have Fiend. Definitely want to run everything before boss. There's our PI on the Hunter. And I can't get that. Okay, there is Barrier. And something I meant to mention up at the top of the stairs, these poles with these single Dracnoid breakers, blanketing the entire party with Rapture is always a good play in these type poles. For that, it's called the shoulder whatever, bestial roar. So if you have the entire group blanketed, it's just really nice. And also, I think right there I shielded myself on his charge. I think I've shielded many or all of the charges, but that is from the targeted spells weak aura. The Dracnoid guy charges one person in the party, and I just think it's one of those things that's like for the fun of it. Being able to see it and play your shields on it is just really fun. So, yep. So the same type of room, we have one breaker, and we're gonna have a lot of orbs. So shielded myself on that charge. Oh, I got aggro. Walled. Too much was happening all at once. And for this in Discord, I'm yelling just do orbs for a second because I am coding the party in fat ass shields. So those roars, the AoE attack, if someone knows, let me know. I think they're like 15 seconds apart. So you want to try and time your Rapture so that it'll cover 2, is what I'm getting at. So it's kind of just like a mental clock, but you don't want to cast Rapture right after a roar. You want to cast it like midway from the previous one. So you'll like coat the party in shields and then recoat them in shields. That's the ideal play. Oh, and that sucked. Thankfully no one died. Yeah, we missed an orb there that lined up perfectly with the roar, and it almost put the group in a problem area. What else is new? I guess nothing. Okay, so now we have 2 of these guys, and boss next, Tyrannical boss next. But these guys are still problematic. So I do drop PI. And this is just one of those cases where even though it's a Tyrannical boss, this fight is going to take at least a minute. So I don't see any reason in holding PI for a minute. It's just too much uptime. So drop it. And we'd only get it once on boss anyway, ideally. So, oh wow. The hunter just popped, I remember. So combat ended and he accidentally hit True Shot there. So that is a huge loss, which we would have loved to have here. So, rip. But this boss is easier now. Again, I think it's one of those things that was fixed. All of that upfront damage from this, it didn't feel right. I think the mechanic was a move mechanic, not a move quickly mechanic. I think it was just built a little bit wrong. So for this first one, what do I do? Nothing. Okay, so I tried to precast a Radiance, but it was a little bit of a misplay. The Radiance went to 100% of overheal. It'd been better if I had delayed it by a split second. So I didn't want to use a defensive yet. The entire party was at full health, which is defensive. So I didn't use anything. I just let us take it. And it's not nearly as bad as it used to be, but when that frost bomb attack goes out, the best thing to do is have the entire group atoned, either individually or with a radiance. Schism, that was a little bit early, but flood a penance proc as the group moves. And here we can see where that target is. There is an aura associated, but it looks like I'm pulling that one from the targeted spells. Alright, and for that attack, I cast a Rapture really late, and it was actually a perfect Rapture, because I coded one shield on everyone in the party, the attack went off, and then I re-shielded everyone in the party, and it covered the following attack. So that's the best way to do it. You want it to cover 2 attacks generally, especially since it's the long Rapture. And I don't think everyone plays long Rapture, but I like it. Yep, and for that one I was flooding a penance proc. And going into those moments where I have to heal and move, my play is to farm a penance proc and intentionally bank it, waiting for the attack. Yeah, so for procs like Harsh Discipline, which are not randomized, the best way you want to use it is thoughtfully. And for this one, I am going to drop a barrier and a single shield on myself to play defensively. It was really cool that I got pulled in because I was trying to get my mind games off and a couple other things while Atonements and Schism was up. Oh man, I was one smite off of a purple penance proc. Alright, this boss, not a problem. I didn't think it was like that terrible before, but I could see how people didn't like it. But now it is just hella easy. And for this last boss, we have one key moment where we want to time our Rapture. We have tank slams we want to get ahead of and dispel. And we're going to have a mid-cast or mid-fight PI cast, which is always tricky. So it's a white dotted line when the cast is going out. You know what, I'm going to change that to blue. So it's going to be a blue dotted line when the cast is going out, and it switches to solid blue for the dispel. Yeah, I need to change that. You know I love my color coding. Yeah, it would just make more sense if it was blue and blue.
4, 3, 2, 1.
So he and I are coordinating in Discord, and he is trying to cover all of the upfront damage, and my plan is to get the dispel. And here comes the Unleashed Destruction, is the only thing I'm tracking. That is our Rapture queue. And there's almost no need to recast Raptures. Just a waste of mana, really. So I do think I get ahead of some of these tank slams with a shield. The Dragon Strike. Yeah, that one I got ahead of. So situationally, I think it's totally fine to shield ahead of the attack and then give another global dispelling after. Just keeps your tank alive. Also, you'll notice these guys stand out as white, full opacity. You don't want to lose them. And the hardened crystal, I put a little glow on. Since as a Disc Priest we're only doing, you know, at most 15,000 overall,
4,
I think the best thing you could do with your measly DPS is give it to the shielded crystal. So I try and have him stand out so I can target him. Shield, dispel. Yeah, I'm going to change that to blue. I'm going to try and update all my things for you guys. I always make changes like at least once a week, but I don't think it's necessary to like change it once a week. Okay, so that grip on the hunter, he used his turtle, but I'm not going to miss a pro grip like that. So I go for the clump first. That way I can spread my dots around, and then I click over to the hardened crystal. PI is almost coming up. So I'm trying to keep an eye on my allies and their stack amount. Uh-oh. I can always give a single dispel to a group. Okay, so tank went down. I don't carry a battle res anymore, so this is real spooky. We don't have any battle reses in group. So as a defensive, I rapture everybody. I send out my Shadow Fiend, and boom. So before I recap, you might have noticed my Shadow Fiend was up, or if you didn't, I'm just going to call myself out. My Shadow Fiend was available the entire fight, and I didn't cast him until the last second, and almost like 14 seconds of him were lost. So it is one thing, like even though I keep noticing how bad I am with him, I'm not getting any better. So I might change up my weak R system soon, but I'm using this one now that glows the button when a cooldown is available, but it's not working even half the time. There's like a problem with the code or something, and I don't know enough about it. But anyway, that was a really good group. The only thing that could have happened differently at the end, so I think we were both starting to panic, or we're all starting to panic, to be honest. But in my book, I had Pain Sup and Barrier available also. And also the tank had spells available. So if it wasn't for the panicking, the better thing to have done there is you can Pain Sup in front of the Dragon Strike, just like you could shield in front of it. And that's the only thing I could have done better there. It would have saved his life, would have been a little more clean, but thankfully it was a timed key. And there you can see I'm adding in my Arcane Cleave. I can update my weak aura, but to put in a new spell only takes about 6 or 7 seconds. So that's how you do it. If you don't know, you just kind of type it in. But that was a pretty good run. I think the best way to handle orbs is having a couple of options. A standard like target then cast is always a good method, but having mouse over macros is a great method as well, so you don't have to lose your target. And then I had to alter the LUA code for KUI Target Helper to implement Schism. Oh my gosh, that was long-winded. Right now, the Target Helper add-on only has Purge the Wicked loaded as a trackable aura by color. Again, I just don't think the developer of that add-on really knows much about Discipline, but to add Schism, if you want to add Schism, which I think it has a lot of utility to a field to see it by color. If you just go into the LUA code, there's one called like auras. It's also really easy. Discipline Priest is right at the top of the list. You don't even have to scroll. And you can just type in the spell ID and the name of Schism. And then you can color code it to a purple or whatever color you'd want. That was it for the key. And then looking at the meters real quick, I always like to look at how much I absorb. I did about 8 million in key moments with Rapture, and that was about 2 million off the top with Aegis. And then I like to look at how much those shields reflect. And for this run, it was right around 1 million damage. And until next time.